Nikon just launched the Nikkor Z 28 to 135mm f4 power zoom, and it can be pre-ordered now. If you do, I hope you'll use the link in the description because Adorama has faith in me and gives me a 2% commission if you do so. I'm structuring this video a little differently. It's partially intentionally scripted and partially not so, in the sense that I crammed a bunch of loose thoughts into the teleprompter and fixed the vocabulary and timbre. Why? Because I don't have this lens in my hands and I don't want to just do information regurgitation. That being said, Matt Irwin, I love you, my guy. I watch your content all the time and you know it. And I'm actually really eager to watch your video after I've completed this video that I'm making right now. Same goes for Matt Granger and Petapixel and all the other early birds that get to get their hands on it early. I want you guys to keep up the good work and I will see you soon. But for this video, doing something a little bit different, I have refrained all day from any consumption of content on this lens. That way I can actually give you guys my raw reaction and my initial thoughts. They may be foolish by this point, but these are my initial thoughts. In the future, I will rent and test this lens as I have done most Z lenses to date, and will actually be 100% tested and graded no later than July of 2025. So if you go to zwadephoto.com/theopticexplorer, you can see the grades that I give all of the Nikon Z lenses. Those are Nikon-made Nikon lenses. First up, the looks. Boy, she is good looking. That is one handsome lens. All those functional rings and the gold flare indicating that this is a reckoning. It looks like a lens that means business and has a purpose. It somehow looks a little steampunky and maybe a little industrial while still being sleek and sexy. Oddly enough, it is not labeled as an S-line lens, but with that gold ring, it somehow looks more S-line than any other S-line. I noted that mounted on the front of Z cameras, that it is about exactly how big I thought it might be. It's not ginormous, but not dainty, and dare I say, convenient. But this isn't a lens that you primary as a selfie lens, although at 28mm, you can probably do some of that as well as many other things, so it is a good trade-off. What we know is it's a power zoom, and that's pretty sweet. And I can tell you from experience with the 12-28DX power zoom lens, it's pretty darn useful for content creators like myself who find themselves in the wild alone. Power zooms allow for much better quality B-roll footage. For me, a full-frame power zoom lens that's a little smaller, something like a 24-105 and smaller in size, that would be a buy it sight unseen. Let's talk about the price. To be honest, I may have made remarks in the past on how much this lens would cost, but I really actually kind of have no idea if I did, and I really probably had no idea. While $2,600 is a ton of money, it doesn't really feel unreasonable for what this lens is bringing to the table for most people, and it actually seems like a good deal for who I think this lens is for. Spoiler, I think it's for exactly who Nikon described that it's for, its initial audience. People shooting documentaries or location work, and they're either solo or it's a small crew. That seems kind of perfect for what this lens is offering. On that note of who it's for, while you can take stills with this lens, and I'm sure the images are probably amazing, I don't even want to call this a stills lens. I don't know that there's that big of a benefit of having power zoom for stills only, honestly. You kind of have better control of zipping in and out with your hand if you only shoot stills. And if you do, get the 24-120 f4S. It's a highly regarded lens for much less money if you are only a stills shooter. Again, for video, power zoom is kind of really awesome. Nikon mentions that this lens is intended to be used on the Nikon Z9. That does not mean that you can't use it on other cameras, but using it on the Z9 does come with a perk, which is pretty darn cool. On the Z9, you get access to high-res zoom, which can push the lens out to 270mm. Since the Z9 is Nikon's best video camera, kind of makes sense. Use the best on the best. This lens we know is also internal zooming, so it's not going to get all wonky on a gimbal whenever you zoom. I say all of that to mention this. It's kind of weird that they gave it an f-stop, not a t-stop. If you don't know the difference, and my friend Chris Batchelor, who you've seen on the channel before, much more of a video guy, he may have my head for this one, but I think f-stop is the light measured entering the lens, and t-stop is the light measured at the sensor after the light has bounced around the lens and is now leaving. That is an important measurement for filmmakers because light measured onto the sensor from lens to lens means that swapping lenses result in the exact same every other setting with each new focal length that you put on. Not saying Nikon is wrong, it's just an interesting choice. It kind of makes sense because Nikon, until just recently, was a mostly photography company, and then they bought Red, and so photographers live in the F world for some reason, and Nikon generally sells to that audience. And it makes me wonder if Nikon isn't trying to flip some stills folks into video folks a little more seamlessly, and that is actually a really good idea. Enter the new Red cameras with Z mount. I'm not a video guy, so I'm not going to really get into those. Basically, this lens in use seems very cine, but it really kind of exists in a superposition between cine and still lens. I'm sure somewhere someone either will or they maybe already have measured what the actual t-stop is going to end up being. I went over to Nikon USA and I took a look at the minimum focus distance, and at 28mm the minimum focus distance is 1.12 and at 135 it's 1.87 feet. As a reference, the 135 Plena's minimum focus distance is 2.69 feet, so I imagine that makes the lens even more versatile for those close-ups you might want in a video. Construction-wise, I actually thought it might be heavier, and it's by no means lightweight, but 1120 grams is lighter than what I thought it was going to be. It's got 9 rounded aperture blades and 18 elements and 13 groups. Nothing too shocking. Now for coatings and such, it's kind of the typical Nikon fanfare. However, even though I mentioned earlier that it's not labeled as an S-line lens, it does have mesoamorphous coating, which is not typical Nikon fanfare. At least not yet, because this coating is actually pretty new. The first lens to get it was the 400mm f2.8 TCV-RS, which only launched in 2022. Since then, we've seen it on the 600 f4, the Plena, and the new 35mm f1.2 has it, but I can't think as I was writing the script of any others. And not even the 85mm f1.2 has that coating, and that's a more expensive and very premium lens. Point is, it may not have the S-line badge on it, but it definitely seems to be treated as an S-line lens. Maybe in the future, if we get a whole line of cine-focused lenses, then they won't be classified S-line at all, and they'll just get the gold ring to differentiate them. And people will naturally start calling Nikon cine lenses gold line, which I haven't heard yet, and if it catches on, I want a nickel every time somebody says it. I could probably go on longer, but the things I was curious about, I've already gone over. Now, if you want more information, then you can follow me over to the other great content creators who launched hands-on previews of the Nikkor Z 28 to 135mm f4PZ, and we can show them some love. I'm Z Wade, the Z Wade, and Z Wade Photo. Stay sharp, YouTube.